Good Wednesday morning. Thanks for joining us on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Alicia Lewis. Happening this morning, Minneapolis police launching their multi-agency safe summer operation. They're targeting a small group of violent offenders who commit a large number of crimes during the summer months. They're also partnering with federal law enforcement to go after drugs and after guns. Meantime, Minneapolis Park and Rec Board announced it's ramping up police patrols at Boom Island Park after this weekend's fatal mass shooting. More park police will be assigned to patrol the area from 8 to midnight starting Friday night. The park already put up mobile cameras in the parking lot, and police say they believe multiple people opened fire at a large gathering there Sunday. A 23-year-old mom died in the shooting and 6 others were hurt. So far, no one's been arrested. Questions are swirling this morning after federal law enforcement descended on 2 Mexican restaurants in the Twin Cities. One of those raids in Minneapolis sparking protests as people thought it was an immigration raid. Our Michelle Beck has everything we know at this hour.
Well, hey guys, still at this hour, people seem confused over what actually happened. New TikTok videos and comments in the last few hours show footage much like this, only they say the words ICE raid. Both MPD and the mayor say this was not immigration enforcement, but that it was a federal criminal search warrant for drugs and money laundering. They also say no one was arrested in that operation. Meanwhile, protesters had already formed around this Mexican restaurant on East Lake Street. You can see the tension here as various law enforcement agencies were on scene, including the FBI, ICE, DA, and ATF. Local police say they were only there for crowd control. At one point, one person told us she was directing traffic when a driver hit her.
And he stopped, and then I had my hands on the roof of his car, and then he gunned it, and he sped about 40 miles an hour down to the corner here. I got knocked down. I still haven't really, my adrenaline is still really high up there.
So you just saw the raid and the protests from South Minneapolis, but authorities actually raided another building in Bloomington. Same restaurant owners, just a different location, but no protests that we know of there. Back to you.
Michelle, thank you. Developing this morning, some Golden Valley police officers are threatening to leave the department as the city is investigating its police chief. Chief Virgil Green was put on administrative leave over the weekend. The city only saying it's reviewing a complaint. Dozens of people, though, showed up to support the chief at last night's city council meeting, demanding to know why he's under investigation. The mayor did not comment on what may have happened, but admitted morale is low.
There has been talks that we have a lot of officers who are not happy, and several are ready to depart, and we cannot let that happen. We will not recover as a city if that happens.
Right now, it's not clear how long the investigation into the chief will take. Well, back at home, Governor Tim Walz will meet with state lawmakers on the budget today. They were supposed to meet yesterday, but it all got postponed. This comes as we're still waiting to find out when Walz will call a special session to pass budget bills. They need to have a budget in place before July 1st to pass it and avoid a government shutdown. Also happening today, thousands of nurses will be on the picket line at hospitals across the Twin Cities. The Minnesota Nurses Association is demanding action on issues like understaffing and unsafe working conditions. They say their contracts will be up at the end of the month for nurses here in the Twin Cities. Community and faith leaders came together in Boulder last night to pray after a violent anti-Semitic attack there this weekend. They gathered on Pearl Street Mall where on Sunday a dozen people were injured during an event to remember Israeli hostages being held in Gaza. Police say a man attacked them with Molotov cocktails and a makeshift flamethrower. Now that suspect, Mohammed Solomon, was in the country illegally on an expired tourist visa. That's according to the Department of Homeland Security. Yesterday, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem announced that immigration officials have detained his wife and his kids.
Now, Mohammed's despicable actions will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But we're also investigating to what extent his family knew about this horrific attack, if they had any knowledge of it, or if they provided support to it.
Solomon is due back in court tomorrow on Colorado state charges. New this morning, tariffs on steel and aluminum imports doubled. President Trump upping them from 25% to 50%. It comes as President Trump faces pushback on his massive spending bill. For White House special employee Elon Musk, he is weighing in on senators on Capitol Hill begin digging into the details of the president's one big, beautiful bill. NBC's Chris Pallone has the very latest from Washington.
Congressional Republicans are walking a tightrope as they try to pass President Trump's priorities in this spending and tax cut bill. They're trying to do it in one bill that can pass both houses of Congress without any Democratic support. As tariffs on aluminum and steel double for most U.S. trade partners overnight, dissent is bubbling up among some of President Trump's allies over his signature spending bill. Billionaire Elon Musk, who spent months trying to slash government spending as a temporary government employee, blasted the president's self-proclaimed big, beautiful bill as a disgusting abomination. Writing on X, Musk complained the president's plan will massively increase the gigantic budget deficit. Some GOP budget hardliners agree.
I can't in good conscience give up every principle that I stand for and every principle that I was elected upon, and that's that we can't accumulate more debt.
Independent analysts project, as written, the bill could add several $1 trillion to the deficit. It extends tax cuts, boosts spending on defense and border security, and includes cuts to Medicaid and food aid programs. The White House is brushing off Musk's criticism.
Look, the president already knows where Elon Musk stood on this bill. It doesn't change the president's opinion. This is one big, beautiful bill, and he's sticking to it.
It comes as the president's latest tariffs on steel and aluminum took effect overnight, doubling from 25% to 50%. With China as a top competitor in the industry, the White House says President Trump could speak with President Xi in the coming days.
There will be a leader-to-leader talk very soon.
President Trump escalating his trade war, risking increased costs for Americans to potentially shore up the nation's steel industry. Republicans on the Senate Finance Committee will meet with President Trump at the White House today to come up with some tweaks to the bill so that it can pass both houses of Congress. In Washington, Chris Pallone. Now back to you.
Well, for the first time in nearly 3 decades, the FDA is planning to review the nutrients and ingredients found in baby formula. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says that he's ordered that review, dubbed Operation Stork Speed, to make sure ingredients in formula are safe and wholesome for babies. The CDC says 3/4 of infants drink formula in the first 6 months of their life, and it's the only source of nutrition for about 40% of them. Well, reaction is pouring in this morning. The Vikings, their fans, and the football community as a whole mourning the loss of Jim Marshall, one of the greatest Vikings of all time. The team announcing Marshall died following a lengthy hospital stay at 87 years old. Our sports director, Reggie Wilson, has more on his legacy.
He's the Vikings' all-time Iron Man. Jim Marshall was a force. When I moved to Minnesota, my father-in-law, who's from Texas, told me he grew up a Vikings fan because of the Purple People Eaters. Marshall is a hallmark of the franchise and a bona fide legend. He was the Vikings captain for 14 seasons and helped lead the team to 4 Super Bowls. Marshall started 282 consecutive games, 270 of those for the Vikes. A record that stood until Brett Favre, of course, broke it in 2009 in a purple uniform. Sacks did not become an official stat until 1982, but research later credited Marshall with 130.5 sacks in his 20 seasons, which would tie him for 22nd in NFL history. Vikings analyst Pete Bursich says Marshall was always at his best when he played.
I don't think there's anyone who was with this organization from its founding that gets the respect or has earned the respect that Jim Marshall has. No question about it. He might be the Viking, the first Viking of this franchise.
Although Marshall is one of the greatest Vikings players ever, he ultimately did not live to see his induction into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, something many Vikings fans and football historians alike bemoan. But Bursich says Marshall garners the respect of those he played with and those who've come after, and that will never go away.
All right, stick with us. More news and weather coming up after the short break.